Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a missing 411 and possible cryptid, whether it be Dogman or Sasquatch, abduction / murder. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. They're available on Audible, Amazon, iTunes. The links to those audiobooks are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Alright guys, so today's upload is going to be centered around a 411 case that is close to me. I had a family member who was part of the search. It's only 40 minutes north of my house. And I'm going to take a drive up there a little later today after this is uploaded and kind of talk to some people in the town. I'm going to reach out to the family. I've actually reached out to the family. I'm waiting for a second reply now. But this case is, we're talking 6 years almost. And it's baffling. And it's right in my backyard. So, let's get into it. Let's get into the geography part of it first. The Adirondack Mountains form a massif, which is a small cluster of mountains, in northeastern United States. Its boundaries correspond roughly to the boundaries of the Adirondack Park. They cover about 5,000 square miles. The mountains form roughly circular dome, about 160 miles in diameter and a mile high. The current relief owes much to glaciation. There are more than 200 lakes around the mountains, including Lake George, hometown, Lake Placid, and Lake Tyr of the Clouds, which is the source of the Hudson River. The Adirondack region is also home to hundreds of mountain summits, with some reaching the height of 5,000 feet or more. The word Adirondack is thought to come from a Mohawk word, Adirondack, meaning eaters of trees. The earliest written use of the name spelled Rontax, Rontaks, was in 1729 by French missionary Joseph Francis Lafitau. He exclaimed that the word was used by the Iroquois as a derogatory term for the groups of Algonquins who did not practice agriculture and therefore sometimes had to eat bark to survive harsh winters. As the Mohawks had no written language at the time, Europeans used various phonetic spellings of the word, including ACHKOKX or RONDAXE and Adirondacks, but with the CK at the end placed an X. Such words were strongly associated with the region, but they were not yet commonly considered the place's name. An English map from 1761 labels the area simply deer hunting country. In 1837, the mountains were named Adirondacks by Ebenezer Emmons. May 16th, 1799 to October 1st, 1863, was a pioneering American geologist whose work includes naming the Adirondack Mountains in New York, as well as the first ascent of Mount Marcy, which my mom climbed to the peak pregnant with me. So now we will move on to a little more. So now I gave you some little geography with a little bit of history. This is a news article from my newspaper. Now, these little bits of information I'm giving you is all going to lead into the 411 and why I feel what I feel. Whitehall is a place known for historic residents. Philip Skene established the settlement once called Skenesborough in 1759. In 1776, Benedict Arnold, yes, that Benedict Arnold, built a fleet there, making it the birthplace of the American Navy. And then there's Bigfoot. Through the years, Whitehall area has become a hotbed for alleged sightings of the giant hairy creature. We can trace it back to the Algonquin and the Iroquois, state Paul Bartholomew, co-author of Bigfoot Encounters in New York, New England, Documented Evidence, Stranger Than Fiction. The recent released book by Bartholomew and his brother, Robert, chronicles hundreds of alleged eyewitness accounts across the region. From ancient American Indian lore up to events as recent as 2006, the stories show a prevalence of reports of the monster in the area. Shrill cries echo through the woods. Witness claims to unexpectedly see huge hirsute animals, and enormous ape-like footprints often are left at the scene. Sometimes there's a skunk-like smell. Bartholomew takes the report seriously. The witnesses have everything to lose and nothing to gain by putting their stories out there, he states, which is 100% true. Bartholomew said he and his brother wrote Bigfoot Encounters, New England, New York, to document the prevalence of sightings in the region. Although reports of the creature come from across the country and the world, Bigfoot or Sasquatch often is thought to be an entity of the Pacific Northwest, but claims of unusual creatures caught by surprise in the Adirondacks and the surrounding areas date back hundreds of years. There's a rich history on the East Coast that is often overlooked, Bartholomew said. You look into the history of the area, and they are talking about this 100 to 200 years ago. For Whitehall, the pivotal year for sightings seems to be 1976. The country was celebrating its bicentennial, but Bigfoot was the local center of attention that summer and fall. Bartholomew details the encounters of his book. On August 24th, 3 Whitehall teens reported seeing a 7 to 8 foot tall, brown, hairy creature in the field off of Abear Road. The teens allegedly saw the figure 2 times that night. They also claimed to hear a noise that sounded like a cross between a woman screaming and a pig squealing. The next day, the farmer found big human footprints nearby and a ravaged deer carcass. That night, a local off-duty police officer, who was a brother of one of the teens, went to the site with a New York State trooper. Around midnight, the police officer spotted a pair of red eyes reflecting off his headlights. He shut off his lights and radioed the trooper, who put the spotlight on some nearby bushes. The police officer said he turned his headlights back on when he heard something crashing through the shrubs. He claims to have seen almost 8 foot tall creature that he estimated weighed 400 pounds. He did not fire his gun because he said the figure looked too human. The creature then vanished into the brush. Later that year, village police sergeant reported hearing an eerie, high-pitched yell while hunting in the same area. A few days later, a man from Granville reported shooting a Bigfoot. It's a big deal, Bartholomew, who is 12 at the time, remembers. The whole town was really split in the middle. A life of investigations. Through the years, Bartholomew has spent much of his free time talking to hundreds of people who have reported sightings. At his home in Whitehall, his giant plaster cast that had been made from footprints at the scene of some of the encounters. Finding a footprint on local terrain can be tricky, Bartholomew states. Tracks are most likely to appear along creeks or riverbeds. Interjection, why? Well, because riverbeds and creek beds train tracks, this and that, are like their highway, man. They can just post-art and include that. There's a lot in this article that could have been written differently, but that's just me. The dermal ridges are similar to castings made in the 70s, he said, holding a casting taken in Vermont, which is only a spit away from Whitehall. The similarities make it unlikely the prints are hoax, according to Bartholomew, but not everyone is convinced by the evidence. Naysayers often say bears as a likely explanation for the sightings. Bartholomew disagrees. Many of the reports compiled by Bartholomew involve drivers who have claimed to see the creature cross the road in a secluded area. Although the incidences usually happen at night, Bartholomew said the stories describe characteristics that do not match bears. The creatures, almost always, are described as walking on two legs with muscular structure similar to that of a human. He then states he has never seen a Bigfoot, but he has had some late-night roadway encounters with wildlife. I hit a deer last night, and I hit one a couple years back, he said. The accident happened quickly, but he said he was able to identify the animal despite his surprise. When skeptics say they are seeing bears, it does not seem plausible. The personal accounts and collected evidence have convinced Bartholomew a yet undiscovered species is lurking the woods around Whitehall. Well, not just Whitehall. I believe that something is being sighted that has not been established. Obviously, people are seeing something. Whitehall resident rallied to get legislation passed by the Whitehall Village Board in 2004 to protect the creatures. I thought it worked on multiple levels. It established the history of the creature, and it could put a phenomenon in positive light, so witnesses won't be afraid to come forward. Bartholomew's brother and co-author, Robert, still wants scientific proof of the creature's existence. My brother Paul is convinced the creature exists. Robert Bartholomew, a sociologist currently working with Aborigines in Australia, wrote in an email. I, on the other hand, while acknowledging that there is compelling evidence, as a scientist require physical evidence in the form of body, fossils, bones, nothing less will suffice. Paul is hopeful that his years of research will validate with conclusive evidence. If it happens, lore will be history. I think the case sort of presents itself, he states. Now, this next part is the last part until we get into that 411, but this one's really going to screw with some people's heads, especially those know-it-alls. The Genesqua is a subspecies of Sasquatch mentioned in Native American folklore as the stone giant man. In Iroquois legend, this hairy hominid was known as the Oat-en-Yard-head, which translates to stone giant or stone coat. It is reported as Sasquatch's larger, bulkier, and more aggressive cousin. It has rock-hard skin, and they twist the heads off their victims until they are decapitated. It is also known to throw rocks at humans. They are said to be much more aggressive than other Sasquatch and appear to be very violent, territorial. They are about 9 to 11 feet tall and anywhere between 8 to 100 pounds to 1,030 pounds. The Genesqua were said to have raided Native American camps and carried away their inhabitants. This is important. Listen to that piece real quick before we just remember this one sentence, please. The Genesqua were said to raid Native American camps and carry away their inhabitants. The majority of these poor souls would be eaten alive in one large fest. However, some would be decapitated first by the means of intense head twisting. The Genesqua are also said to exude a horrible odor from their armpits that is described as a mixture between that of a skunk and a dead animal. Now, in theory and in scientific proof, gorillas have been known to release such body odors as a form of communication as well. Now let's get into the 411. Please remember that one sentence. The Genesqua were said to raid Native American camps and carry away their inhabitants. Tom Messick disappeared November 15th, 2015. Horicon, Warren County, Lake George Wild Forest. New York. Body never located. On November 15, 2015, Tom Messick Sr., age 82, ex-paratrooper, walked into the woods south of Brant Lake, New York. Interjection, Brant Lake, I caught my first fish ever. It was a 9-inch perch. Just to throw that in. To hunt for deer, and was never seen again. No sign of him or his belongings ever turned up, including a rifle and walkie-talkie, despite a large search of the area. Unusually, the FBI was even involved in the investigation. This is a strange and puzzling hunting disappearance. The hunting trip to Lake George Wild Forest. Tom lived in the city of Troy in New York State and was out that Sunday with a group of 6 family members and friends who were hunting near Lily Pond in the area of the state land that is part of Lake George's Wild Forest. The older members of the group, 4 of them, were watchers in a static position, sat on a log or similar comfortable spots, and were in the near vertical line, while the younger hunters used a path around the lake to drive the deer to the watchers as part of the drive. Since the mid-1800s, Brant Lake has been a popular fishing and hunting area among wealthy visitors, including Theodore Roosevelt. Brant Lake Camp was incorporated by R.B. Gurdensnang and J.E. Alberti and John F. Mallory in 1917. After 55 years of hunting with longtime friends, also senior man in the Messick hunting camp in Hague, they decided to try this area for the first time. Tom was supposed to stay in one spot as members of the group walked through the woods to push deer towards him. But when they arrived at the location where he was supposed to be, he was gone, without a trace of him or his belongings. No sign of any deer was found that day. No sign of deer was found that day. There was not a sight, man. Now, if you look online, these Adirondack Mountains, where this guy was hunting, these people were hunting, to not hear or have a sight of deer is freaking crazy just by itself. Because I went for a ride just the other day, and me and my daughter, just a quick 20-minute ride up a dirt road, saw 4 deer. 4 deer. On a hot-ass frickin' night. Sorry. He was wearing duck boots, camouflage pants, coat, gloves, and a red and black checkered hat that he had worn for many years. He carried a rifle and a walkie-talkie. Who was Tom? Tom served in the U.S. Army as a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division, and he was 5 feet 10 inches tall, weighed approximately 160 pounds, was an experienced hunter, woodsman, taught hunting and survival training for many years. He had a history of heart problems, lost an eye in an accident with an explosive device in his 20s. So he had poor vision and limited hearing as well as 159 stitches in his hand. He had also just gotten over a case of shingles and nearly decided not to go on this hunting trip. So, yes, Tom was old. He was 82 years old. But he was familiar, not with these area of woods, but he was familiar with hunting. He was familiar with survival. He knew what to do if you got lost. He was not a slouch. He, served with the 82nd Airborne Division. Yeah, he was 82. People are going to, oh my God, he was so old. But, he was coherent. He did not have dementia. These incidents that they're talking about the explosive, that was 60-something years ago when he was with probably the 82nd Airborne Division. So the dude knows what to do, or knew what to do. He was not just your average run-of-the-mill 82-year-old guy in a walker shitting his pants in a pair of Depends. This guy was, lack of a better word, he was pretty hardcore for an old man. He was last seen at 10 a.m. when the Messick did not show up at the agreed upon time. His friends called forest rangers and they searched from 4:30 p.m. It got dark around 7. At that point, half the group stayed and fired their rifles and honked their car horns to attract Tom to the area. The rest of the men left the scene and reported him missing to the family and authorities. The day after Tom had disappeared on November 16th, the search started with 13 trained SAR professionals from the Park Service. It was a well-organized start. A huge search over several weeks involved more than 300 professionals and volunteers on the same days, assisted with dogs, divers, several helicopters, no clues, including no sign of his rifle or walkie-talkie. More than 4 square miles was searched, with a larger area being searched by the air with the aid of a helicopter from New York State Police Aviation Unit. More than 15 agencies were involved: DEC Forest Rangers, DEC Police Canine, DEC Police Officers, FBI Quick Response Team, the State Police Special Operations Response Team, Warren County Sheriff Office Tactical Team, volunteers from New York State Federation of Search and Rescue Teams. What the hell? Have you ever heard of such? So, you know what? I'm thinking right there, that's saying, hey, man, we know something. We know something got this poor man. Something carried him off. Something carried him off. His gun and walkie-talkie, probably had it on his person, and something carried him off. But I'm just going to... DEC Forest Rangers, DEC Police Canine, DEC Police Officers, FBI Quick Response Team, State Police Special Operations Response Team, Warren County Sheriff's Tactical Team, volunteers from the New York State Federation of Search and Rescue Teams. What the is going on? That many teams. I mean, these are specially trained. They don't just... The weather was poor with heavy rain, but sniffer dogs were deployed before the worst of the rain arrived. Searchers walked through the woods no matter how thick they were, including swamps, and checked nearby roads. But there was absolutely nothing. Areas were tied off with string to box off specific areas to allow a detailed search of every grid zone. It was described as a spider web of string in the forest. Now, really quick, before I know some people will be like, oh yeah, the FBI gets involved. Well, the FBI Quick Response Team consists of a personnel, special agents, professional support personnel who provide expertise in crisis management, hostage rescue, surveillance, aviation, hazardous devices, mitigation, crisis negotiation, behavioral analysis, and tactical operations. Through aggressive training programs, state-of-the-art technologies and equipment, extensive research, far-reaching partnerships with international, federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, they work successfully resolve critical incidences worldwide and achieve its mission of readiness, response, and resolution. Does that sound like some sort of team that is going to be sent to upstate New York? Now, I live here, so I can say it. It's literally bumfuck New York. We're talking, it is poor up there. People live and work their asses off for what they have up there. There's not much up there. Now, is that honestly something that you really think that the FBI Quick Response Team was sent to find an 82-year-old man? Really? I mean, that's fishy to me. If it's not fishy to you, I don't know what is. Given his age, searchers were baffled as he could not have gotten far from his original location, and said it was weird that there were no signs of wildlife while SAR teams were in operation, almost like something had silenced the woods. Giddy up, You know what I'm talking about, don't you? The search area had many caves, crevices, and other hazards. Could he have somehow fallen down in one of these? No. For a man of his age, was he really mobile enough? Why were there no clues on the ground despite a methodical grid? Well, the Genesqua was said to raid Native American camps and carry away their inhabitants. Surprisingly, the FBI arrived on the fourth day, November 19th. This is unusual as the FBI never gets involved in these types of searches. They don't participate in search and rescue, only if foul play is involved. Tom's wife, Beverly, said the FBI told me something isn't right with his case, but they don't know what. They won't share any theories, if they have any. The FBI said until they make a discovery, they're never going to know. But subsequently, investigators said there had been no indications of foul play. David Winchell, the spokesperson for DEC, said rangers continued to search the area. Since a wide-scale ground search ended in January of 2016, that means rangers check the area periodically for evidence and clues. Beverly said that he had been in the woods since he was a boy, and if he had gotten lost, he would have cut a piece of his jacket, tied it to a tree, and done other things that he had learned. His wife said her greatest fear was he was a victim of foul play. The only thing I can think of is maybe someone came by on a quad, hurt him, got scared, and drove him out of there. I keep praying they'll find him to have some sort of closure. I keep worrying that I didn't tell him I loved him the last day I saw him alive. In the summer of 2018, state police used sniffer dogs trained to detect cadavers to go through portions of the woods and fields near where Messick disappeared. State police investigator John Diet said no clues were found, but the state police investigation is still ongoing. One of the men from the hunting group states, "I heard strange noises in the woods, but I didn't know what it was, just different noises from what I usually would hear." You know, like what? It'd be hard to explain because it was different. Something different I've never heard before. I just can't say what. How long were these sounds? It was about 2 to 3 seconds. No, it's just whatever it is, you know? How far away? I'd say probably 150 yards away, something like that. Was it towards Tom or away from Tom? This was towards the hill, the top of the hill, so yeah. Did you tell the police? Yeah, I told them. But they just passed it off. Tom's disappearance is yet another really strange case. Tom just vanished off the face of the planet. He was old, but he was an experienced backwoodsman, a tough guy, an ex-paratrooper, and not one to wander off into the woods when on a hunt. He had a rifle and a walkie-talkie, and no sign of them had been found, despite the massive search of the area, including all of the inaccessible parts, including water and caves. So big a search that locals thought someone important, like a politician, was involved. Sniffer dogs, nor FLIR-equipped helicopters were able to find any trace. Was he snatched from Lake George Wild Forest by a serial killer or something else? Why was the FBI involved in this case? This is a sighting that happened years prior, but within a 5-minute hop, skip, and a jump from where Tom was last seen. Brant Lake, New York, River Road, near Route 8. It was about 6 a.m. I was on my way to work, the Roaring Brook Ranch, when something came from the right side of the road out of the woods and forced me to stop or run into it. It was dark that time of morning, so it took a few seconds to get my thoughts together. When I did, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was somewhere between 7 to 8 feet tall, at least, with white or light gray hair from head to toe. It was standing 10 to 12 feet from my car, directly in the headlights, so I had perfect view. The creature was standing facing the left side of the road, with a slight left twist to its body in my direction. We stared at each other for what seemed to be minutes, but I can't say for how long. This creature made no sound at all, like the screams we've heard about. I don't have any reason to believe it was male or female. Needless to say, I've carried my camera ever since, but I believe that was a once-in-a-lifetime incident. Alright guys, well, that's Tom Messick Sr.'s Missing 411, Horicon, New York. I'm going up there a little bit later. I'm going to take some pictures of that area and share them with you so you guys can see how deep these forests are, how just lonely these forests are. But there's so much wrong with this missing 411. So much. You know, I mean, you've got teams of highly trained professionals. We're not talking average Joe, you know, internet put together search teams that go looking for Bigfoot or Dogman. We're talking real deal shit. You know, these guys are, and then the FBI to get involved. But the crazy things are, is the FBI was involved. The woods were dead silent when everyone was there. Everything was investigated, caves, nooks, crannies, water. But the odd sound that was heard while hunting before they found out Tom was gone. Once again, walkie-talkie and gun wasn't found. No articles of clothing. The Genesqua is said to raid Native American camps and carry off its inhabitants, never to be seen again. I'm leaving it at that. You guys can make your own decisions, conclusions, whatever. I've got mine. Have a good night, guys.